literature, the Dark Ages and the Bards. English medieval literature had, so far as we know, no existence until Christian times of the Dark Ages when Latin was the language of English literature. English medieval literature was not written. It was passed by word of mouth from one generation to another by English, Welsh and Irish bards. The term Middle English literature refers to the literature written in the form of the English language known as Middle English from the 12th century until the 1470s. During this time the Chancery Standard, a form of London-based English, became widespread and the printing press regularized the language. Between the 1470s and the middle of the following century there was a transition to early modern English. In literary terms, the characteristics of the literary works written did not change radically until the effects of the Renaissance and Reformed Christianity became more apparent in the reign of King Henry VIII. There are three main categories of Middle English literature: religious, courtly love, and Arthurian, though much of Geoffrey Chaucer's work stands outside these. Among the many religious works are those in the Catherine group and the writings of Julian of Norwich and Richard Rolle. After the Norman conquest of England, law French became the standard language of courts, parliament, and society. The Norman dialects of the ruling classes mixed with the Anglo-Saxon of the people and became Anglo-Norman, and Anglo-Saxon underwent a gradual transition into Middle English. Around the turn of the 13th century, Layamon wrote in Middle English. Other transitional works were popular entertainment, including a variety of romances and lyrics. With time, the English language gained prestige, and in 1362 it replaced French and Latin courts of law. Early examples of Middle English literature are the Ormulum and Havelock the Dane. In the 14th century major works of English literature began once again to appear, including the works of Chaucer. The latter portion of the 14th century also saw the consolidation of English as a written language and a shift to secular writing. In the late 15th century William Caxton printed 4/5 of his works in English, which helped to standardize the language and expand the vocabulary. Middle English language spoken after the Norman conquest, 1066, until the late 15th century. Scholarly opinion varies, but the Oxford English Dictionary specifies the period of 1150 to 1500. 2. This stage of the development of the English language roughly followed the height of the late Middle Ages. Middle English developed out of late Old English, seeing many dramatic changes in its grammar, pronunciation and orthography. Writing customs during Middle English times varied widely, but by the end of the period, about 1470, aided by the invention of the printing press, a standard based on the London dialect, Chancery Standard, had become established. This largely forms the basis for modern English spelling, although pronunciation has changed considerably since that time. Middle English was succeeded in England by the era of early modern English, which lasted until about 1650. Also, by that time the Scots language was developing from a variant of the Northumbrian dialect, prevalent in northern England and spoken in southeast Scotland. During the Middle English period many Old English grammatical features were simplified or disappeared. Noun, adjective and verb inflections were simplified, a process that included the reduction, and eventual elimination, of most grammatical case distinctions. Middle English also saw a mass adoption of Norman French vocabulary, especially in areas such as politics, law, everyday English vocabulary, Old Norse influence becoming apparent. Significant changes in pronunciation took place, especially for long vowels and diphthongs, which in the later Middle English period began to undergo the Great Vowel Shift. Little survives of early Middle English literature, most likely due to the Norman domination and the prestige that came with writing in French rather than English. During the 14th century, a new style of literature emerged with the works of notable writers such as John Wycliffe and Geoffrey Chaucer, whose Canterbury Tales remains the most studied and read work of the period. 4. Poets wrote both in the vernacular and courtly English. It is popularly believed by that William Shakespeare wrote in Middle English 5, but he actually wrote in early modern English. Medieval literature, the poets and authors. Medieval literature was written by a variety of authors and poets, many of which are included in the following list. Caedmon, 657 to 680, was the first English poet of whom we have any knowledge and credited with the authorship of The Dream of the Holy Rood. Venerable B. 673–735, who wrote the ecclesiastical history of England and the scientific treatise, De Natura Rerum. Geoffrey Chaucer 1343–1400, famous medieval author of the Canterbury Tales. Marjorie Kemp 1373 c. 1438, famous as the author of the first autobiography in English. John Gower 1325–1408, was famous as a medieval poet and friend of Geoffrey Chaucer. Francesco Petrarch 1304–1374, was famous as an Italian poet and humanist and for his poems which were addressed to Laura. Dante 1265–1321, famous as a medieval poet and politician. Christine de Pizan 1364–1430, famous as a medieval author and feminist. William Longland, c. 1332–c. 1386, who was famous as an English poet who wrote The Vision of Piers Plowman. Boccaccio, 1313–1375, an Italian writer who was famous for writing the Decameron. Raphael Holinshed, c. 1529–1580, famous as the medieval author of Holinshed's Chronicles of England, Scotland, and Ireland.